begin, let me make something abundantly clear. If Elon Musk and his family tree have no haters, I am dead. I have no shame in my disdain. Please allow me to cook. Thank you. We've talked a little bit about the Musk family in the past, but now I am bringing you guys a very comprehensive deep dive, starting from Elon Musk's parents. We'll talk a little bit about Elon Musk's grandparents as well. Let's begin with May Musk, Elon Musk's mother, because I personally believe that May Musk lives in a completely different reality than the rest of us to a frightening degree. Let's do a super quick background, a Cliff Notes background on May Musk so that we can better understand why her spawn acts the way that he does. Elon Musk's mother, May Musk, was born in Canada in 1948, and she is one of a twin. Her sister is named Kay. When her and her twin sister were babies, her family decided to relocate from Canada to South Africa. No shade at all children are beautiful, but Kay and May seem to have been directly pulled from The Shining. Okay, so follow me here, right? We know May Musk was born in 1948. We know that her family relocated to South Africa in 1948. What else happened in 1948? Oh, the South African apartheid began in 1948. May Musk's father, Elon Musk's grandfather, is a well-documented supporter of apartheid. Let me give you some cliff notes on the South African apartheid real quickly, because it is imperative that you have somewhat of an understanding of the injustices that occurred to the indigenous people of South Africa. Because to fully understand where the Musk wealth came from, we have to go back in history and understand their part in the South African apartheid and how they created generational wealth out of legalized oppression. So the apartheid in South Africa officially began in 1948 and officially ended in 1994. In present day, 2024, the indigenous people of South Africa have not fully recovered from over 50 years of legalized oppression. May Musk's parents, Elon Musk's mother's parents, his grandparents, were some of the OG settlers in the South African apartheid, which caused indigenous and native South Africans to be displaced en masse from their homes to allow for settlers to come in and take their jobs, their homes, their land, everything. They were displaced en masse, and the displacement of these native South Africans was the least violent thing that they had to endure at the hands of the National Party, which took rule after the Second World Conflict. Here is the National Party that quite literally took over South Africa. Take a good look at them. Do any of those people look anywhere near indigenous to South Africa to you? No. Thanks to these brain-dead skin sacks, formerly known as the National Party, interracial marriage became criminalized in South Africa. Laws were passed that barred native indigenous South Africans from traveling, working, and living in the areas where settlers were residing, which was their native land. Jobs were taken from indigenous South Africans and given to unqualified settlers. Black South Africans legally lost the right to vote, and the Black South African children no longer had rights nor access to education. The government quite literally went in, took their land, took their homes, took their jobs, took their right to education, took their right to vote, and then made it extremely hard for them to be able to pick themselves up and start a new life that they have been forced to start because of the government. The South African apartheid brought out many excellent voices and advocates of change, including Nelson Mandela, who started to make a lot of noise in the 1950s doing anti-apartheid activist work. Because of this, the National Party would arrest Nelson Mandela and sentence him to life in prison. Nelson Mandela would then go on to spend 27 years behind bars during the apartheid, but he was released towards the fall of the apartheid, and a few years after he was released, he was awarded with a Nobel Peace Prize, and then a few years after that, he was named the president of South Africa. By the 1960s, Black South Africans had been absolutely pushed to their limit, and they began peacefully protesting very often. As the injustices grew, the protests against the national parties grew as well. It was far too common of an occurrence for peaceful protests by Black South Africans to lead to a mass unaliving of peaceful protesters. For example, the mass unaliving in Sharpeville, there was a peaceful protest that ultimately resulted in police opening fire on this crowd of protesters, unaliving 69 people. And primarily teens and children would come out to these protests to fight for the right to education. Now, that was very much a condensed version of the horrors that the indigenous people of South Africa had to experience during the apartheid. Hopefully that gives you somewhat of an idea of the turmoil and the horror these people had to live through at the hands of oppressors like May Musk's family and more people in May Musk's life that we'll get into in a moment. May Musk's father and mother were both very well off even before moving to apartheid South Africa. Her father was especially influential, being a chiropractor, an amateur archaeologist, and the former director of Technocracy Incorporated. I want to talk more about technocracy and how I believe May Musk's father, Elon Musk's grandfather's political ideology has influenced Elon Musk very much so in how he is moving politically in the United States in present day. So here we have May Musk's parents. We have her father and her mother. As you can see, her mother was a ballerina, and her father, like we just talked about, was the director of Technocracy Incorporated, as well as an amateur archaeologist and a chiropractor. But Technocracy Incorporated is what I want you guys to pay attention to for a moment. So technocracy is a political movement, like a political ideology that gained popularity around the 1930s, specifically in the United States and in Canada. Technocracy basically proposed replacing partisan politicians and business folk with engineers and scientists who were believed to have a better technical experience of balancing an economy. This ideology was specifically curated and cultivated by an American named Howard Scott, who was basically like the father of technocracy and a very close associate of May Musk's father. These two very big figures in technocracy were both arrested in Canada for having involvement in what Canada deemed as an illegal organization. The reason why Canada deemed technocracy an illegal organization was because technocracy opposed anyone getting involved in the Second World Conflict. If you do choose to do a little more digging into technocracy just for your own understanding of what it was, what it is, take a look at the map that technocracy wanted their power hold to be over. Greenland, Canada, Panama Canal. And then I want you to compare that to what the incoming president has said about land that he would like to take over in his upcoming term. You know, we've heard Canada, Greenland, Panama Canal. Are we following along? Are you catching my drift?
He wrote that the United States of America feels that the ownership and control of Greenland is an absolute necessity.
He has been referring to Canada as the 51st state in some of his social media posts, saying he thinks that would be a great idea. President-elect Trump started referring to Trudeau as Governor Trudeau of the great state of Canada.
In a flurry of social media posts on Christmas Day, Trump suggesting that the U.S. could take control of Canada, parts of Panama, and Greenland, leading to swift pushback from key allies.
While technocracy is no longer illegal, it has been heavily criticized by more modern day political scientists. Its main criticisms have been the fact that technocracy creates unjust concentrations of power, and technocracy fully excludes citizens from policy making and influencing policy. But anyway, after May Musk's father, Joshua, was arrested a few years later is when May Musk's father would pick up and move his family to apartheid South Africa. Skipping ahead a little bit. So May Musk and her sister, they had grown up in South Africa. They began working as office assistants for their father at just 12 years old, and they would come in to work for their father every day after school. May Musk was fairly popular in high school, and she had also began modeling, which she was finding a lot of success in, and she was also entering beauty pageants and beauty competitions. In 1969, May was a finalist for a beauty competition, the Miss South Africa beauty competition, because, you know, when we think of a South African queen, this is exactly what we think of, this ice queen. Absolutely. A year after May placed in that South African beauty pageant, she would go on to marry a man who she met in high school, who was at the time in school for engineering, a man named Errol Musk. May Musk and Errol Musk would be married from 1970 for almost a decade, when they would ultimately divorce in 1979. May and Errol's marriage would produce 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The the oldest being Elon, followed by Kimball, and finally their little girl, Tosca Musk. During May and Errol's marriage, not only was Errol working as a very successful engineer, he was also involved in politics during the active apartheid in South Africa. Errol initially ran and was elected to be a part of the Progressive Federal Party, a party that sought to end the apartheid or at least begin to dismantle the apartheid. But within a few years of him working within that Progressive Party, he decided that he changed his mind and actually agreed with the opposing political party that sought to uphold many aspects of the apartheid, if not the apartheid in full. Eerily similar to how we saw his son, Elon Musk, initially show a lot of support for the Democratic Party, and within 2 years ultimately completely did a 180 and changed all of his ideologies and stances so that he could be a part of a party that would financially serve him better. And if you do not think that Errol Musk, a descendant of settlers, did not benefit from the apartheid in South Africa, you are deeply, deeply mistaken, and we will get into it more. At the time that May and Errol divorced, the Musks were some of the wealthiest people in Pretoria, South Africa. In fact, the home that Elon Musk and his siblings grew up in was the largest home in Pretoria, South Africa. Errol was so incredibly wealthy that he owned multiple massive homes. He owned multiple luxury vehicles. He owned a private plane. He owned a yacht. He was one of the wealthiest men that anyone could find. As you can see here are some of the photos of Elon Musk growing up in what he considered nothing. Because, Elon Musk came from absolutely nothing, according to him. But the reason for the divorce happening was because May described Errol as a man who had a terrible temper and he was physically violent. He would berate her verbally. He was just an awful, awful man. And at the time of their divorce, Errol decided to withhold as much as he possibly could from May. She was awarded custody of all 3 of their children. Errol was not happy about that and retaliated against her for it, suing her multiple times to try to get custody of their children, and eventually just pulling really dirty moves and bribing his children to come live with them because he could afford more than May could. About 2 years after their divorce was finalized, Errol Musk bribed his son Elon to come live with him and promised him he would give him a computer, which worked. 4 years later, Kimball Musk would join Elon and his father, all living under the same roof, and they would all live under the same roof until Kimball and Elon finished high school. And after Elon graduated high school in 1989, he would then move to Canada and was followed by his mother and sister 6 months later. So after Elon Musk would move to Canada, that is when his villain arc would truly begin. I'm going to pause us on moving forward with the Elon lore so that we can complete Elon Musk's parents' lore first. So after following her son and bringing her daughter along with her to Canada, May Musk began putting her dietitian degree to use that she had gained in South Africa, and she also began modeling and appearing in commercials and advertising as well in Canada and the United States. Starting in 2011, May Musk was appearing in ads for Target, for Revlon, for Elle Canada, Special K cereal, Time Magazine, CoverGirl, and she has also been the oldest woman to date to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Not only that, May Musk has also appeared in a Beyonce music video. While May Musk was finding her success again in the modeling and advertising field, her sons, Elon and Kimball, were very much growing rapidly in the tech world, which has prompted May to write memoirs and books detailing what it was like to raise 2 of the greatest minds in tech in present day. I think as much as many people want to look at May Musk as this story of resilience and this mother who came out of a really terrible situation and raised these geniuses, it's really hard to actually accept that as reality when May Musk opens her mouth. Not only is she very pro-natalist like her son and her ex-husband, who believes that even if you cannot afford children, even if you don't really want children, you are morally obligated to have children. And if you run into financial difficulties, then you should just not go to the movies and not go out to dinner. As if the movies and dinner dates are what is putting Americans into poverty. Another example of May Musk being completely out of touch with reality. When May Musk received her United States citizenship, she registered as a Democrat. But after Democrats decided that, hey, Elon Musk kind of sucks, we don't really want him involved in politics, she got mad about it and publicly and happily switched sides of the aisle along with Elon Musk because of how mean Democrats were to her son. And May Musk switched sides so aggressively that just this past year, May Musk got up onto her son's social media app, X, and encouraged Republicans to commit voter fraud because Democrats were already doing that by allowing undocumented people to vote. Undocumented people being allowed to vote was obviously a major MAGA talking point this election, and like most MAGA talking points, are nothing more than bullshit. Oh, and of course, we cannot forget the time when May Musk was publicly and blatantly racist when a Vietnamese American journalist decided to write an honest but unflattering piece about Elon Musk. And before it was even released, May Musk tweeted out that unfortunately, the figure who was writing this piece about her son was Vietnamese. Instead of saying, unfortunately, a piece about my son is going to be coming out that doesn't paint him in the best light, she said, unfortunately, it was created by a Vietnamese journalist. People have also been very critical to May Musk's opinions of American politics when she has so many business dealings, specifically in China. Similarly to her son, similarly to the criticisms that Elon has received for his involvement in American politics, May Musk tries very hard to appear down to earth while also trying to appear as if she is God's gift to humanity, and it is less than harmonious. Okay, now we're going to jump over to Errol Musk, and we are going to wrap up the parental lore of Elon Musk. Errol Musk was born in South Africa to a British mother named Cora Musk and a South African father named Walter Henry James Musk. Errol's father worked as a South African army sergeant, and during the Second World Conflict, Errol Musk's father worked as military intelligence inside of Egypt. There is a lot less information available to us about Errol's parents opposed to May's parents. I'm going to be jumping around here a little bit to kind of get us caught back up with our timeline. Like we talked about, Errol did find himself involved in politics where he did the little flip-floppy thing for a little while, but he primarily made most of his money through his engineering degree, through developing properties, primarily homes, retail stores, office spaces, properties in general across apartheid South Africa. Errol Musk being a property developer in apartheid South Africa is proof that Errol Musk financially benefited from legalized oppression of our brothers and sisters in South Africa. This guy created generational wealth through multiple means of exploitation and oppression. They're never going to admit that though. Even though it's right there in front of you, they will never admit it because the Musks are cowards. They are cowards. Not only was Errol becoming one of the wealthiest men in South Africa through property development on stolen land, in the 80s, Errol Musk also acquired stake in a heavily armed, almost positively unethical emerald mine in Zambia. While there is very little verifiable information about Errol Musk's involvement in this illegal emerald mine, Elon Musk has recounted in past interviews that he recalls going to that emerald mine with his father as a teenager, and he remembers it being heavily armed. Despite Errol himself admitting that he did have stake in these mines, and Elon himself admitting that he remembers visiting them as a teenager, in present day, Elon Musk denies that his family ever made a penny off of said emerald mines. Probably because at that time in Zambia, there was a mining rush between the 1970s and the 1980s when it was discovered that Zambia was rich in emeralds and massive illegal mining operations began to take place. So like I said, during the time when Errol Musk claimed to have stake in these mines in Zambia, there was a lot of illegal mining operations happening. There was a major rush when people realized that Zambia was rich in emerald deposits, and not only were illegal mining operations taking place, forced labor was happening. Amateur miners were coming in and destroying people's land. It was really out of control, so much to the point that the Zambian government had to get involved and oversee all mining operations that were happening within these mines in Zambia. Eventually, the Zambian government had to fully restrict any mining activities that went on in Zambia to only be allowed to happen by the residents who lived near those mines. That way that the gems that were coming and being mined out of Zambia, profit made from those gems could go back into the government of Zambia so that it could go back into the people, instead of just a bunch of random people coming in from who knows where to drain them of their resources that they should have every right to be able to put back into their own people. I think the reason that the Musks act increasingly nervous about the topic of the emerald mines is because the Zambian government has become increasingly vocal about the exploitation of the mines that occurred in the 1970s through the 1980s. The reason I also think they act so weird about it is because we know factually his family's wealth was not only bore from apartheid, but it leaves room to wonder, was this family's wealth born out of slave labor as well? Anyway, moving on. After Errol Musk and May Musk divorced, in 1992, Errol Musk would go on to marry another woman named Heidi. The couple would go on to have 2 little girls together, Alexandra and Aisha Rose. At the time that Errol and Heidi got married, Heidi had a 4-year-old little girl from a previous marriage named Jana. So at the time when Errol would have met Jana, she would have been about 4 years old and he would have been in his mid-40s, as they have a 42-year age gap. Here in this photo, you can see Elon Musk with his half-sisters, Aisha Rose and Alexandra, and on this side is his stepsister, Jana. In this photo, you can see Errol, Heidi, Aisha Rose and Alexandra, and Jana. After just a few years of marriage, Heidi and Errol would divorce, but Errol was still an involved parent in all 3 girls' lives. About 20 years after Errol and Heidi divorced, Errol would begin a romantic relationship with his stepdaughter, Jana. Like we talked about, Errol's here, Jana's here. These are the younger sisters. So before we get into the age gap of it all, I want you guys to understand, Errol Musk began a physical romantic relationship with his stepdaughter, who he met when she was 4 years old and is biologically related to his 2 children, Aisha and Alexandra Rose, who are the half-siblings of the rest of his children, Elon, Kimball, Tosca. This is a group of children whom even post-divorce remained very close, like siblings, and Errol decided to begin a romantic relationship with one of them. In 2018, the story officially broke that Errol Musk was in a committed and romantic relationship with his stepdaughter, who he met when she was 4. It was discovered that the year prior, in 2017, Errol Musk and his stepdaughter, Jana, had given birth to a child together. The following year, after the world was informed about this relationship, in 2019, Errol and his stepdaughter gave birth to a second child together. Here in this photo, you can tell just how close all these girls are in age. Errol's biological daughters that he had with Heidi are not far apart in age from Jana, their half-sister, who is in a romantic relationship with their father. So yes, Errol Musk indeed has 2 children with his stepdaughter and his children's biological half-sister. Disgusting. Disgusting. And Errol has defended his actions, saying that this is all just a part of God's plan. As we know, like Elon, Errol is very pro-natalist. It's kind of interesting because similar to Elon Musk, Errol Musk often echo sentiments that encourage selective breeding. He does not like to refer to it as eugenics, only survival of the fittest, and only the best genetics should be bred alongside the best genetics. But I think when we take a step back and take a look at both Errol and Elon's families and the views that they hold towards reproduction, it's becoming more and more obvious what these people view as superior genetics, because Errol Musk has reproduced with family, right? And Elon Musk has at least 350 baby mamas, right? And then screams at us to engage in conservative family values while also spewing conflicting pronatalism arguments. I think that they are just not able to say the part out loud that they want to. Because of this situation, Elon briefly and performatively, in my opinion, cut ties with his father and called him the most terrible human being on the planet and said that he was an evil, evil man. The two have since reconciled, and Elon has publicly shared that he does financially support his father in large, so it seems like things must be okay. So now hopefully you all have a better idea of the mom and dad who created this grotesque soul who is Elon Musk. I think it's very important that you understand where Elon Musk came from so that you are able to clock his lies in real time when he tells you that he came from nothing, just like you. I feel like I have successfully laid the groundwork to begin a visceral and never-ending deep dive on Elon Musk. So give me a couple of days and I'll have that up for you guys as soon as possible. But hopefully this gave you a better idea of where Elon Musk actually came from.